Thank you for tuning in to How Did You Get There, the podcast, where it's all about the journey. It's about the twists and turns, the trials and triumphs that brought people to where they are right now. My name is Phoebe, and I'm your host. And today I have with me Andrea Wilson, and she's our guest for today. Hi, Andrea.
Hello, Phoebe.
So I could pretend as though I don't know Andrea, but actually, Andrea has been a massive part of my life for a very long time. And I've always had such admiration for who she is as a human being, as a mother. She's very family oriented. She loves with all her heart, all her family. She's very self assured. She's a go getter. And if there is something that needs to be done, best believe Andrea Wilson is going to do it. I knew Andrea as an engineer, and 10 years ago, she started her own business called Achieve Potential. And Achieve Potential is all about helping people to gain holistic success. So, Andrea, I'm so very proud of who you are and everything that you've achieved. And I am really happy that you're a guest on this podcast today.
Thanks for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
And, you've obviously listened to me describing you and how I see you. But in your own eyes, who is Andrea?
Who is Andrea? Andrea is a dreamer. And it's interesting that I started my journey very logical. I'm an engineer. That's what I did. And then I transitioned and started because dreaming and engineering probably don't go hand in hand. I'm, but I'm a dreamer and I see possibilities. I see possibilities in things, but most importantly, I see possibilities in people. And I love that. I think it's one of my superpower to be able to see possibilities when people don't see possibilities, especially in themselves. And also, I'm a connector and I love connecting people, ideas with ideas. So, in a nutshell, I'm a dreamer. I see possibilities, and I am a connector.
That's beautiful because I think when you're young, you always dream. As children, we always dream. We say, "Yeah, when I grow up, I want to be this thing or this person." And yet, when we grow up, it's almost as though we forget about those dreams. So let's go back to the beginning. Let's go back to young Andrea. Who is she? What were some of the dreams that you had as a child? And were there any glimpses of this connector that you are today?
Not at all. Not at all. I'll tell you when the connector surfaced. But let's start at the very beginning. A very good place to start. Um, so, as you mentioned, I grew up in Jamaica, and my first dream happened that I can recall. And I'm going to talk career now. I wanted to be a doctor. I was really good at sciences. And back then, before WWW, what do you do if you're good at math and science and stuff like that? So I said I wanted to be a doctor. And I was a girl guide. I don't know if you guys know what girl guide and brownies are. So as a part of that, I would go into the hospitals, and I recognized at that point in time that empathy ran too much in my veins. So I couldn't do the doctor thing. And I was not good with blood. But I still continued to tell people that I was going to be a doctor because everybody else in high school seemed to know what they wanted to be, but me. And fast forward to me just going through, I was always, I guess where I got this dreaming from is I read a lot and I was best friends with the librarian. Sounds kind of geeky, doesn't it? But when I But when I think back on, because I never met an engineer in my life. So I must have read about engineering in a book. And so I pursued engineering initially. I initially wanted to do chemical engineering, but when I went to Kingston to the school, they didn't offer chemical engineering. They didn't even know what it was. And they offered mechanical engineering and electrical engineering. And I thought electrocution, mechanical, dirty feet.
Perhaps not.
No, no, dirty fingernails. And I have a problem with dirt, so that's how I chose my career path. I
So
picked
you said
electrocution. I
electrocution.
picked electrocution. Yeah, yeah. So that's when it started.
I can see the Jamaican flag behind you. And of course, I know that you're Jamaican. What was it like growing up in Jamaica? Because you said you knew about engineering through reading. So books transported you there. Were you exposed to that? Were you from an affluent family? Did you have a lot? Who motivated you to even go after those dreams of being an
Okay, so
engineer?
I have to plug my mom. I have to plug my mom. And you know what? I might be a little bit too vulnerable and too transparent here. Um, my mother in the 60s, in the early 60s. So yes, I just celebrated my 60th birthday. I'm putting it out there. But my mom in the 60s, and we weren't from Af- um wouldn't even call it middle class, to be honest. We're far from that.
Mhm.
But my mother was in college in the 60s because she had a bright future ahead. And I came along unexpectedly. And so she had to shift focus because my father had no interest in me being a part of his life. So I came from a single parent, and but she had such awesome support. I grew up with my grandparents because my mom, they gave her an opportunity to pursue her career and they supported me. But I was always surrounded by people who love me. And as a result of that, and when I talk more about the business, my business is all about having people, regardless of their background, start dreaming again, but surround them with people and in a community of folks that will help to lift them up. So I grew up in a communal family, and the neighbors were, everybody looked out for everybody, and that's how I grew up. So yeah, and maybe you might cut this, Phoebe. I don't know, but one of my motivations in life was to have access to indoor plumbing. Growing up, we didn't have indoor plumbing. And I said, later in life, that is not going to be problem for me. So that was that was a motivation and a driver for me to succeed. And because people invested so much in me, my mom, my my grandparents, my and it's all on my maternal side. Um Shout out to the right family. They I could not let them down. I could not let them down. I had to They invested in me, and I just had to make sure I held my head high, and they would always be proud of what I did. It's almost like I wanted to make sure that they knew their investment was worth it.
I want to kind of jump forward. So, how did you end up? What was that path like to engineering? Were there any difficulties? Because I'm guessing in those days, engineering would have been very male dominated.
Yes, I went to CAS, and I had an option back then because I mean I was blessed with intellectual property or up there. I did okay in school. I did okay in school. And so I had the option to go to the university in Jamaica, but I chose to go to CAS, which was more a polytechnic type hands-on learning. Because my mom used to say, you can you I was very cerebral. We leave it that way. I wasn't as practical as I could have been. So I thought going into engineering and getting some practical skills would help. I did well. I did well at CAS, and then my first job was at Alken Jamaica Limited, and they literally had to delay my start date because I was the only first female. I was a lot of first. I was the first person to get the honors diploma at the school I went to, and then I was the first female to be hired in the capacity that I was hired in. So they had to build a female bathroom for me before I could actually start. So yeah, trailblazer.
So, Alcan Jamaica Limited, For people who don't know, what is Alcan? What industry is that? What do they do there?
But it's a mining company, and it's the start of what you wrap your chicken in when you're cooking it, or to protect pans from getting too soiled. So that's Alcan. It was a bauxite mining company.
Okay. So you're the first woman who's gone into that role. They're building a female bathroom so that you can actually, you know, maintain your dignity, so to speak. Were there any challenges being in such a male dominated space? And were there any other women in that space? What was that like?
Um, I guess I don't really see challenges.
Mm.
Um, I see opportunities. So working there, I even back in school when I was studying engineering. Yeah, actually, a funny story. I remember, I might get in trouble for saying this, but I remember my first day at CAS, I had a T-shirt that said, "A woman has to do twice as much as a man to be considered half as good. Fortunately, it's not difficult." So I was like 17 years old. I've always had that mindset that if it's gonna be, it's up to me, and it doesn't matter if there's nobody else that looks like me. I'm gonna I'm gonna make that path. So I've never really followed other people's path. I've always kind of created and made my own path. And I've kind of been like that ever since. It's my family. My grandmother was extremely strong-willed, and so was my mother and my aunts, and so I got a full dose of that.
So you left, and what happens after Alcan?
So while I was at Alcan, I worked there for a year, and it's a Canadian company, and these white male from Canada down, and they were wearing suits, and they were the leaders in the organization, and I was wearing scrubs and looking, and I'm like, okay, what do they have that I don't have? That was my next inspiration. I saw them, and I asked, how did you get there? How did you get there? What do you have that I don't have? So they had an engineering degree and they had an MBA. So I'm like, oh, okay. I guess at that point, I had an engineering diploma. So I'm like, oh, I get an engineering degree, get an MBA, and then I'll be driving around in that fancy car like you guys and telling people what to do. And so I worked a year. And after the year, I decided that I wanted to go because we didn't offer engineering at the university in Jamaica. So I had to go overseas. And again, my mom stepped up because we didn't really have money, but by the grace of God, honestly, that's all I can say. And I went to Canada. I had a lot of, my aunts lived in Canada, so I had a lot of, again, family support. Yeah, family. It was always family. Family was always there. And after the year, they said if I worked another year at Alcan, they would give me a scholarship to go wherever I wanted to go to school. But after the year, I'm like, nah, I can't keep doing this. My brain is dying. I can't do this. So off to Canada I went in 1986.
Yes. And so you've made the move to Canada, and by this, you're studying because you want to, like those men, have that degree, have that MBA. Uh, How did you kind of climb the corporate ladder? Because I remember as a child seeing you worked really long hours and you seemed to always be on the go. Still found time for family because it felt like it was work, then soccer practice for the kids, and then sleep, repeat. And your life has changed substantially. It doesn't seem to be so much you being on a treadmill and or basically like a hamster in a hamster wheel. It seems as though there's much more balance. But kind of talk me through that corporate journey. What was that era like for Andrea?
Again, being that trailblazer, it was challenging. I came to Canada close to 40 years ago when, as you alluded to, engineering, female engineers weren't in, you couldn't get an engineering degree online. So
Mm,
Now everybody can say they're an engineer, but there's like, I think there was in my old program, there's probably five engineers when I came here, five engineer and female engineers. And then to top it off, I was a black female engineer with a Jamaican accent. Talk about not fitting in. And people did try to put me in what they thought my box should be.
Hmm.
Remember I told you I was raised by some strong women.
Yes.
It wasn't happening. So I went to Ryerson, did well. You'll hear more about that story. That's where I met the love of my life. Um, I said, well, I had to come to Canada to meet the love of my life. Yeah, so did the Ryerson and again, did well. Um, got my first job in Canada working in the construction industry. And they tried to really put me down, but I knew what I needed to do. I knew where I wanted to go, and I learned when not to say and what not to say and who to say things to.
Yes.
So I did that for a while, and then after I worked in the automotive industry, again surrounded by men, um, and climbed the corporate ladder. At one point, I was part of the senior leadership team of an organization where there are 14 of us, 13 white male, and Andrea. So that's been my journey.
Yes.
So I could either curl up in a ball and say I don't belong,
Hmm.
or choose to say, hey, I'm gonna pave the path for other women. And then I was blessed with three girls. My husband and I have three daughters and a granddaughter. So you know what?
Woman power in that family, right?
I
Woman
tell
power.
you, yep, yep, yep. So that was my journey. And then in 2013, I recognized that I had my ladder up the wrong wall. So I climbed the corporate ladder. I did well. I did well, but then it was time for a change.
Yes. And that's interesting. A couple of things that I want to unpack, because at the point where you were in these spaces where by all intentions you shouldn't have belonged, but you've decided to say, you know what, this is my space and I'm going to own it. What did you learn about yourself?
Um, I learned that de- I had very strong determination.
Hmm.
Um, I had very resilient, and it doesn't matter what happened to me. I was gonna bounce back, and then um, yeah, I knew that I had what it took. I knew that inside I could do whatever. I always felt I could do whatever I put my mind to. I always felt that way. I remember my first job here. I was doing some work at a ski hill at this company in that construction space, and fairly new to Canada. And I saw some young kids skiing, downhill skiing. I'm like, oh, I can do that. I'm like, if they can do it, I can do it. So
Oh no.
I've always had that mindset. If you can do it, I can do it. Almost ended up in the hospital, but
That's what I was
that's another
wondering. I
story.
was wondering, did you conquer skiing? Is that the only thing you've not conquered?
Nah, 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 nah. I've decided that sunshine runs and warm weather runs deep in my blood. So even though now it's very cold here, snow on the ground, not a lot of sunlight. This is not my space to be. I love the sun. And in the winter, I've tried the winter sports thing because my girls have gotten into winter sports and hockey arenas and all that stuff, but it's not for me. It's not for me. And you have to know what's not for you and where you don't thrive. And I don't thrive in cold climates.
That's an interesting one. It's knowing where you thrive and knowing where you don't thrive. But you said that, climbing the corporate ladder, you had your ladder against the wrong wall. How do you know, A, when you're not thriving in a space? What does that look like? What does that feel like? And then how do you know when it's time to move on?
Well, unfortunately, I stayed longer than I should have, and
Hmm.
they helped me to move on. Because sometimes we're in spaces when, and I knew where I was not where I was supposed to be. You could feel it. I mean, I'd get up in the mornings. I didn't want to go to work. I had a headache. I take 2 hours before I went to work, and when I got there, and work, there's a saying that if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. And at one point, because I was at this organization for 10 years, and I always say I'd never stay anywhere that long because after 10 years, you become a lifer. And so, and I was changing jobs a lot. So my first job, and then I worked for Ford, I was working in all these jobs. My first job, 5.5 years. Second job, 4.5 years. Third job, 3.5 years.
Wow.
So when I went to this organization, I said to my manager at the time, "Oh, I'm only here for 2.5 years. I'm on a declining balance to my retirement." I was in my 30s or something, or 40s, maybe early 40s. He's like, "What are you saying?" I'm like, "Because I get bored very easily. And if I'm bored, you're not going to get the best of me." So in 2012, I recognized where I was not where I wanted to be. And
Hmm.
I decided I was going to apply for 52 jobs that year, one job
Wow.
a week. And 4 weeks into the year, my mother in law, who was so special to me, announced that she had been diagnosed with cancer. So at that point, I put my dreams on hold and realized and told her I was going to walk that journey with her. So I paused that search, and fast forward to 2013, my mother in law passed. And 2013 was a year of significant changes. My mother in law passed, and she was my second mom. My I lost my job. Yeah, I came into work after I had done we're going through major restructuring, and I remember flying out to Vancouver and closing down one of the call centers and telling people that their jobs had been eliminated through this restructuring. And my sister-in-law said to me, "You're making plans for people. Somebody probably making plans for
Oh,
you."
wow.
Sure, did all their dirty work. They handed me a package,
Mm.
and I went to my office, and I'm like, "Thank you, Jesus," because I wanted out of there so bad. So they actually gave me very strong support to
Yes.
leave the company because you get a package, right? And I've always wanted a package because I had a friend who getting packages from company. So so your question was, when do you know when to leave and when to stay? I think in your gut, you know when you're where you're not supposed to be, but sometimes out of fear or whatever, people don't make that leap. For me, I am grateful every day that I didn't leave prematurely, because sometimes we leave prematurely. Because if I had left on my own, I would not have gotten the
No package.
support needed to start my business. So
Yes.
when I started Achieve, I found out September 9th that my job was eliminated. September 20th, I registered Achieve. And I was able to, because I was still getting paid. So I could play around with what a business could look like.
You know what? You've spoken about achieve, and it's so interesting because I certainly know that for a long time I've thought I want to do more, and I don't want my day job to be the thing that defines me. And if something happens, I want to know that I have something that's mine. And a lot of us who are working for somebody else, even if we wanted to do something of our own, we never quite know where to start. What was your process for knowing that achieve was your next step? How did you know that achieve was the direction that you needed to go in? What inspired you to start achieve?
People always come into your life at the right time. As a part of my package, they gave me an outplacement support. And this person I met with, he said, "I am going to market to you So I met him the 9th. I lost my job. The 17th, I was sitting having a conversation with, his name is Alan, still my mentor and dearest friend. And he was in my situation. Fast forward to me meeting him. He had been in business for 30 years. And he said to me, I'm going to market you as, because, oh, he asked me, so what's next for Andrea? I said, I want to teach college and I want to work for a consulting firm because I recognize that I like working on short-term projects and move it on because I get bored very easily. Hence the 5 year, the decline in balance at work. Because once I get bored, I need to get out of there. And so he asked me, why, why college? And I explained because in my one of my roles back then, because I was the National Director of Customer Experience and Sustainability. So very long title. And I had three main functions that I was responsible for. And one of them was the whole corporate social responsibility. And I was working with getting youth exposed to financial literacy from people that had been in business. I was leading that whole function and I recognized I wanted to give back to the next generation. So that's where that whole seed was planted for giving back and working at a college. Because I came from a family of teachers and I said I would never be a teacher. Fast forward, at the end of the day, when God has a plan for your life, no matter how you run from it, it's gonna fall. It's gonna find you. It's gonna find you because even I was teaching at university. I didn't have qualifications to teach at no university. I never had that kind of training. But the door opened, and when you're supposed to move in a space, the door is gonna open. When you're not, especially if you're in alignment with, because I feel we were created. We have a plan. There's a blueprint for my life. And how do you align with what that blueprint is? And right now, I'm in a space where I feel I'm in total alignment with that blueprint for my life. So back to the question, how did Achieve come into being? So he planted that seed and he said, I told him about the teaching and I told him about working for a consulting company. And he said, why don't you start your own consulting company? And I'm like, oh, you can do that? He's like, yeah, you just need to register trade style. And 3 days later, I registered Achieve. And I have not looked back.
Because you've spoken about having a path that seemed almost destined for you. You've got a lot of teachers in your family, a lot of educators. You tried to escape it and you somehow ended there. But you also spoke about taking hold of things and making it happen. So, to what extent do you think some things are fated? And to what extent do you think that you have the control to determine where you go or what direction you take?
That's a very interesting question. And I've had a big shift in my mind because I'm a planner. And when I left corporate, I felt I was in charge of my own destiny. And I had to make that shift to realize that no, somebody else is in charge. And that's when I see things, when things line up and doors open. And it took me a while because I was very Andrea centric. This is the path, this is the direction. If it's gonna be, it's gonna be me. And so just now being in better sync with what God has in store for my life and checking in on a regular to say, is this the path I should be going? Because there are times when doors would be bolted shut and I would find a way to pry it open because that is where I am going. And it doesn't matter what anybody's saying, that's where I'm going. But I've learned to step back and pause and recognize. And it's things are so seamless when it's the path you're supposed to be on. But you have to be in sync. You have to be in sync.
And so, when you started Achieve 10 years ago, what were your goals for Achieve? What did you want to achieve with Achieve?
So I started Achieve and I remember because I had no clue. I had no clue about business ownership. Ask me anything about corporate. I can tell you how to get there with my eyes closed. But I never had entrepreneurial dreams or anything. Somebody just said, "What about starting a consulting company?" Oh, you can do that. Okay. And so I recognized that I needed to surround myself with people who had been there, done that. So we formed an accountability group called Fridays in the Woods. 7 female entrepreneurs. We met, and everybody, all the other 6 women were had been entrepreneurs for a long time. I was the only one with a corporate background. So I was just learning as much. I was drinking from a fire hose with them and then adding some more structure to their business because they didn't understand business acumen and stuff like that. So what was my goal? It took me a while to figure it out. I don't, and I'm very goal oriented, but I don't know if I really had a goal for achieve. I bought a package for like the they call it a trade style or the URL, the whole package and email address. I bought that for 5 years, and I said I'm going to give it a shot for 5 years and see how that works out. And even with my clientele, so initially when I started, I thought I just work with corporate clients because that's what I knew. I knew about Lean Six Sigma and all that stuff, problem solving, and so I just continue in that path. And my first job was with a corporate client, but it brought me no joy. Brought me a lot of money, but no joy. And so I recognized this was not it. And then I started teaching, even started teaching at a college and realized, oh, this brings me joy. Young people, future leaders, empowering them, getting them to dream again, helping them to not make the same errors I made in my path. How could I make their success journey less challenging? Because my road was very challenging, believe you me. I might fluff over it, but it was challenging. And so I eventually shifted my focus of Achieve from working with corporate clients to working with future leaders, which is where we are now. So, when I started in 2013, did I think I'd be here? Absolutely not. I thought I'd be doing the same old stuff I did in corporate because it felt good, but it didn't really. It would have been the easy path. So it didn't really feel good. I could get in because I had options, because I had corporate connections. So I could have done that, but it wasn't feeding my soul. And I needed something that when I get up in the morning, I didn't feel like how I felt when I used to work for somebody else.
Yeah. You know, you sound as though you're in a really good place, and you've mentioned that you celebrated a milestone birthday. When you look, and happy belated birthday.
Thank you.
It's a big one. When you look at where you are now and everything that you have achieved, when you were thinking about what this particular age in your life would look like, is this what you envisioned?
I was going to say never in my wildest dreams, but I'm going to take that back. When I was in my 40s, I think they coined a saying here, freedom 55. And that's my word for this year, by the way, freedom. And I always recognized and thought that when I became 55, I was going to have the freedom to do whatever I chose to do. But then I found out later it was financial planners that coined that. And that was just their freedom 55, not necessarily their clients. But, anyways, I digress. So I always, because I was working in corporate, and after a while, I didn't feel that's where I ultimately wanted to be, but I didn't know where I wanted to be. I never thought of starting my own business. That was not on the agenda, but I knew I didn't want to work for anybody. I wanted the freedom to do what I chose to do because that's, yeah. And so fast forward to that milestone was 60. So I celebrated my 60th birthday. Um, to me, reflecting on where I am, and I am content. I am content. I never dreamt, because I used to think contentment meant settling and not having that drive to continue. But I pinch myself. I literally pinch myself because I can't believe where I am is actually where I am now. So, yeah.
So what's next for you? You are where you are now. You are content, but you've also said it doesn't mean that you're going to stop here. What's next for you?
What's next for me? So, I have two companies now. So, I have Achieve, which is a for profit organization that's 10 years old. In 2020, yes, during the pandemic, I started a not for profit called Future Achievers. And 2023 was a monster year for us. We did extremely well. The business has grown. We're impacting lives significantly across the globe. What's next for me? I'm reading this book called Who, Not How. And I am in that space where I'm working on finding the right who's in all areas of my life so I can start letting go of some of the hows that I was doing. And I, another one of my superpower, I guess, is I have strong leadership skills. And so I've been really good. Why I did well in corporate is I was good at building high performing teams. And in 2023, I actually have a team. It wasn't just Andrea and two people doing stuff. We've been able to hire quite a few people, and I have a leadership team that I can guide and direct and transition some of the stuff that I used to do that no longer brings me joy to people who it brings them joy. They're meant to do this work. So, um, and I am, we'll see what the next decade looks like
Yeah.
because I am I see significant growth happening with the companies and looking for ways to continue that growth, but not Andrea doing the heavy lifting, sitting back and
Yes.
supporting from a distance.
You know, um, Before I get to my final question for you, because we're about to wrap up, I had an interesting conversation with somebody earlier this week. But I was speaking about my own journey, and this person was trying to delve into my psyche. What is it that drives you? Where are you trying to get to? And he said to me, "You're so fixated on the destination that I don't know if you've enjoyed the journey." And he asked me, "Have you enjoyed the journey? Are you enjoying the journey?" And I would put that question to you, I'd pose that question to you. Have you enjoyed the journey in the past? And are you enjoying the journey right now?
That's a great question. I used to, last year, my word was present. So I do this
Mm.
word of the year thing. And my word was present. So I recognized that I needed to be present and stop and smell the roses and not be so fixated on the destination, as you say, because life passes us by so quickly and it needs to be worth you going on that path. So I am definitely in a space where I am more focused on enjoying the journey than I was before. So it probably comes with age. I don't know.
Well, you know what? May we all learn to stop and smell the roses and enjoy the journey a little bit more, because it might make the journey a little bit easier if we make time for enjoyment, a little bit of fun, a little bit of living, because that's what life is about. So, my final question, Andrea, how did you get there?
Hmm. How did I get here? How did I get here where I'm content? Um, the grace of God. But by the grace of God. Um, support support I community. I always got support. I always had people before I understand what mentorship was. I had mentors. I had people that just fed into my life, supported me all along. and praying mother, praying grandmother, praying. Everybody was praying. Lots of prayers, lots of prayers. Um, and education. Yeah, yeah. The whole education thing. In Jamaica, it's big. It's big. Education, we saw that as the way out of poverty. And so get an engineering degree, get an MBA, continuous learning, continuous learning. And, the education path might look different for people because now you can go online and there's so many ways to be educated. You don't have to follow that traditional path.
It doesn't have to be in a classroom, does it?
Nope, because people learn differently. So I had followed a traditional path and I taught in a traditional setting, but my company, we're building something called the School of the Future because people learn so differently and some of the ways that we're teaching are archaic and we need to step it up. And so that's my next challenge, actually. You said, what's next for me? I am building the school of the future. I am, so along with my team, we're building the school of the future that students, regardless of where they are and how they learn, they will feel they belong because success should be accessible to everybody. And sometimes people take that away from them, and some of our educators now, because they're not in their element and where they should be, they're killing dreams of these kids. And I want to leave, I want to eventually sit down and put my feet up, but I need to have future leaders stepping up that I can leave it and they don't totally destroy the world. Come on. So I'm not even sure what question you asked me or what I'm answering.
The question was, how did you get there? But you've answered the question inadvertently because you got there, I think, because of community, because of having people who've always supported you. And as a result, it seems as though that's what's driving you to create that path for others so that they too can have a supportive network for themselves. So you've absolutely answered the question. I'm just you know what, you're such an inspiration, Andrea, and achieve and future achievers. There's I can envision like a lot of great things, a lot of great leaders that will come out of both programs. So congrats and keep on doing what you're doing. If people want to find out more about Achieve or to connect with you, how do they do that?
www.achievepotential.ca.
So that's www.achievepotential.ca. How do they get in touch with you, Andrea? Are you on social media?
info@achievepotential.ca and it will get to me.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so very much, Andrea, for joining us for this episode of the podcast. How did you get there? If you want to find out more about how did you get there, visit us on Instagram, hdygt.pod, or on YouTube at How Did You Get There, or email us, howdidyougеттhere.pod@gmail.com. Please share the episode with your friends, your family, your connections, somebody who you think would benefit from hearing these stories, and give us feedback. Give me feedback. Tell me what I could do differently, could do better. What is it that you like? Please do, because that's the only way that we will grow this community and that I will be able to cater to what you need and the type of content that you want to hear. So thank you very much. Join us for the next episode of How Did You Get There?